connected.
Thank you so much.
The water over into the tail behind. It was right here. He had it right here. flame load on the way down. Try to down the flag. Let me get this thing filled up here. So you have your go? Big guy. Remember that it's called. Okay. So you got this guy. So you gotta bring up the slide show.
Simon has got Pam said that she was bringing, she went to jump drive back at the office working.
Okay.
So she
Yeah.
everybody knows that. At Resurrection, are y'all holding mass? No, what he did last time, he was ready to give us a community.
You can log in.
Oh, really? Just don't say anything. Good, that's what but you know what I was worried about because Ava is supposed to be her first community business. And we have not many classes. So I just wonder how we're going to They did confirmation. Oh, really? Okay. Well, I said on the band. Yeah. See, you know, with Ava, they have that many classes in March. So I told her she's young. I emailed Mom and Dad. So I don't know my baby to be up, you know, moving forward. My baby said she want her pictures and her dress and yeah.
Back in your day.
Right. What's wrong? Was that coming up?
I do see a red thing flashing out there. That could be the lamp, but
Oh, you gotta plug the VGA cord in once you go off.
I'm already know. You on FaceTime. Do you have the projector on?
Yeah, it's on. I got 2 lights on here though. I only think there was one before. I think the other light went out. Make sure on the project laptop that you're make sure the display date is for both.
Yeah, I got it on duplicate. Let me see.
I think it's the projector.
I'm thinking so too. I do see that it's flashing up there. I think maybe the bulb.
Yeah, because he said one was already out.
One was already out. Like the bulb, 2 bulbs or something there.
Yeah, the display was out too.
See it flashing?
Yes. Does that mean I'm going?
Maybe.
What do you say? This office right here.
It may be The bug. You see the bug flashing up there?
We just got all the bugs replaced by, how long ago, last week, we had all the bugs replaced. Push it back up right here and let's get it back down. And right here.
That's just the screen.
Yeah, but usually when we do that, the thing comes on.
See, that's the thing. I got 2 lights flashing on this projector. And I think that's the lamp light.
Yeah.
He said he's got 2 lamp lights flashing upstairs on the projector.
Because some of these big ones, they have to do like a reset on them for them to register the new lamps.
Yeah, I don't think the screen didn't do it. I'm letting down the
$10,000, I know he did do it. That's what it cost, $10,000. Turn the second back on.
Then turn it back on. Just the projector.
I turned this alright, let me just sit off. Unless they got a remote.
Okay, now both of them go at the same time. When it goes off.
Okay.
Hey, they got a remote for this projector?
No,
It's on. When that thing comes on, it's on. We just looked at it the other day. He replaced every bulb in there about 2 weeks ago.
And you turn it on?
It cost us $10,000, yes. The
Two
bulb,
more lights on here.
the bulbs aren't. We just had the bulb. Every bulb in there was replaced 2 weeks ago.
even if you didn't have an output, it should show the manufacturer up on the
It should
screen.
have a blue screen
Yeah,
on
blue
even
screen
if
like
it's
sharp
hooked up.
or whatever it can be.
What you think it is?
It's a lamp, but them flashing light ain't good.
Not a screen. We got a portable.
You know, say that we can display it?
Yeah.
I think they have, we just have to go with the hard copy also.
Oh, I thought you were saying come here. That's why I was like, come here. I'm doing all right. You see, I'm obedient. You look so different. I've never seen that before. It's the mask, I guess. I might be able to do a couple of crimes or two now. Oh, that's all right.
Oh, okay, Bob's good now? Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Hey, we gonna have to let me see if we can I am. Yeah. Let me
I can't see nothing.
yeah, we don't have to figure it out real fast. Let me get out there.
Isn't that neat? Well, you know, I had to pull my mask down
Well, I did too.
because I had on
We both
glasses.
posed and
That's what they're giving all the teachers, and I guess that's for us when we go to
these
the
are
schools.
packets.
When we go to the schools. How's my Lisa? I'm good. I've been good. I see you've been to the lake. I've been in the country. I mean, those are the listed those my phone.
So was the agreement voted? 9 was 97, 9 was 4. We did want to swap and fix some parking lots. We talked about it. Where it is, I'm not putting this over there. Swapping parking lots for
See, they're gonna fix our parking lots for taking the building, for using the bartering.
I told her I saw a hope. And I thought it was really
Well, you know, like all we can do is follow the sun. You know, like after this weekend, we'll be able to determine. You know, we don't want to say. You know, we want to go and we want to make it so because some people need to go, but until we see those numbers,
This all right?
Yeah, if this will work. Maybe turn this just a little bit so we can kind of address both the board. Yeah, that's probably good right there.
Yeah, one up here.
How's y'all get it to work?
This meeting to order. I see we have a quorum here. This is for the budget hearing. And we get an approval of the agenda. Madam President, I move that we adopt the agenda. Second. Any discussion? All in favor with a show of hands? And we will receive Mr. Watts. I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Moore. We also like to thank you for joining in with us in our first budget hearing. And as most of you all know, the law requires that we present 2 budget hearings before the public. Of course, these hearings are for the benefit of the public, so we do encourage public input. And board members, if you're going to follow, it starts on section 5, is where I'm starting from. And I understand we have a board meeting afterwards, so I'm going to kind of speed it up a little bit, and I'll take a little bit more time on Thursday. Of course, our budget process is both interactive and inclusive. It's not a situation where a bunch of accountants sit down and come up with a budget. No, we meet with department heads throughout the district. We meet with principals. We meet with the superintendent to talk about what our needs are for the upcoming year. Of course, as you see, the district administration employees routinely make suggestions as it relates to our budget. And again, we're required to hold 2 budget hearings. Our next budget hearing will be September 10th at Park Crossing High School at 5 o'clock. Again, our next budget hearing will be at Park Crossing High School at 5 o'clock. That's Thursday, September 10th. Of course, while we do encourage public input, there are also certain things that we have to be mindful of. One of those things is budget constraints. And as most of you all know, you can't spend what you don't have. We all know that when we, of course, sit down and work with our household budgets. We may have monies for certain areas, whether it's entertainment, for the children, and for groceries and so forth. And so we have to look at every single part of those monies to make determinations how those funds should be allocated. But we also have to be mindful of certain governmental entities. As you know, the Alabama State Legislature are the ones that pass and approve the statewide budget from the Education Trust Fund. So we have to be mindful of the laws that govern those particular funds. You also have the U.S. Department of Education, the Alabama State Department of Education, and CONMEA, which used to be called SACS. Also, and I don't know whether most of you all know this, but there are several different types of funds that we receive in which we are required to do what is called fund match. For example, we're going to receive about $147 million from the state of Alabama, from its state's foundation program, which is the largest source of funds that we receive. But in order for us to receive those state foundation funds, we have to put up out of our own local funds about $28 million. So there are also certain matching requirements that a district must meet. We also receive about $7.3 million in what is called state capital purchase funds. But as you see, we would have to put up a fund match about $1.4 million in order to receive that $7.3 million in state capital purchase funds. I just want to speak to just a few of the financial highlights that our district has obtained over the last year or two. One of the things we've attained is our district has attained a state-required 1-month fund balance over the last 2 years, and that is huge. The state requires all school districts to obtain and retain what is called a 1-month fund balance. For Montgomery, for 2020, that amount was about $18.8 million. And so our district has maintained that 1-month fund balance over the last couple of years. Our district has met all Alabama State Department of Education financial mandates over the last 2 years. We're doing monthly reconciliations, timely budgets, monthly financial statements, and submissions to the State Department of Education. Also, our district has placed all of our local school bank accounts at one bank, and that has been huge. It used to be where schools, all 50-some of our schools, used to determine which bank they wanted to bank at. Well, we no longer allow that. All of our banks are consolidated at one bank, which provides management the financial oversight to ensure that we know what's going on in those particular accounts. So it's been a good thing for both the school district and the local schools. Also, and I'm sure many of you have heard about this, we've begun to implement an efficient online payment process for parents and for donors. In fact, that process for all high schools and middle schools will be completed by the end of this month. We've already done the pilot with about 7 of our schools, which includes 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and I think 3 elementary schools. And the pilot worked excellent. And so now we're working on all of the rest of the high schools and middle schools. We'll have that done by September 30th, and we intend to have all of the elementary schools done by October 31st. So this will provide parents an opportunity, instead of sending money by their children for fees or for whatever the situation may be, for snacks or whatever. Now those parents could be able to call in and do those funds online, and those dollars go directly to the school's bank account. So it's very, very efficient and beneficial for parents, instead of having to send monies or parents having to go by the school to take monies. It's also really, really good for our bookkeepers because of this COVID situation. We don't want to keep transferring money, cash back and forth. It also provides the opportunity for us to also, I think, purchase our athletic tickets. So even athletic tickets are now, we're doing all of that electronic also. And of course, we are providing, Dr. Moore did request that from this point forward that we provide at a retreat a financial professional development workshop for all of our principals and bookkeepers. And so we do that every year now, and we make sure that bookkeepers and principals are mandated to be there. We want everybody to hear the same thing, the same information as relates to how to govern the finances. Of course, as we have financial highlights, we also have some challenges. And certainly we want to mention those challenges to you. One of the major challenges is that Montgomery Montgomery County provides the minimum amount of local tax support basically any other school district our size in the state. In fact, out of the entire state of Alabama, the minimum amount that a school district must receive is what is called 10 meals. Well, guess how much Montgomery receives? 10 meals. The bare minimum. And every school district has to get 10 meals. But we know how limited the opportunities for our children are with only 10 meals. Also, our district enrollment, of course, is something that we're working on as it relates to the decline. We have lost students over the last several years, and we're working to stabilize that. Again, current fund is not adequate to meet all the demands for our instructional programs, including building renovations, including some of our academic programs. You know, we talk about how we want to provide foreign languages started in some of our middle schools, how we want to provide robotics in our middle schools, and several other different opportunities for our students. Our students really need more exposure to these academic opportunities, and we want to be able to provide that. There we just see a decline of student enrollment over the last several years since 2015. And we see we've lost about 3,000 students, about 3,700 students over that particular time. But we are working to try to stabilize our student body. Of course, COVID has been a challenge in that, but we're working diligently to improve on that. All school districts operate basically on 5 basic fund sources. First, there's the general fund. And the general fund speaks to the general operations of the school district. All of our state funds and our local revenues comprise of our general fund. And I spoke earlier about the state's foundation program, where we will receive $137 million. Well, that's general fund. Our local tax revenues, property taxes, the 10 meals that we get, sales taxes, all of that is part of the general fund. Special revenue fund are basically federal program dollars. We do receive some federal dollars from the federal government. Of course, the thing about those dollars, and I'll speak about that a little bit more, is those dollars are specific in nature. They're categorical. For example, if you receive special ed funds, those dollars can only be expended on our special needs students. If we receive career tech dollars, those dollars can only be expended for our career tech students. We also receive child nutrition funds. That's the food service funds. Of course, those dollars can only be expended for the feeding of our students. Then there's the capital projects fund that speaks to the acquisition or construction, mainly renovations of our schools. Many of you've heard that we have about $250 million worth of deferred maintenance that we are not in a position to address at this particular time. And that's huge. And we all know that even in our own homes that if there's a problem and we do not take care of that problem in a timely manner, it usually gets worse. And that's what we've seen in several of our schools. And that's why this 10 meal situation is so important. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Debt service fund, that's for the payment of long-term debt. And of course, we have to transfer monies from our capital projects fund to our debt service fund to pay long-term debt of about $5 million. Fiduciary funds is non-public school activity monies. These are basically club funds. For example, you may have the FBLA club or the science club, and those dollars can only be spent for those club purposes. Now we see up there in special revenue, it says also includes local school public funds. So monies that are derived at the local school, these are monies that the local school raise. Admissions, concessions, those will be termed special revenue local school public funds. However, Club funds are only for those particular students in that particular club. And there we see an overview of our entire annual operating budget for fiscal year 2021. And let's note that we're projecting total revenues of about $342 million, which is quite an increase from the prior year. But there's a caveat to that. The state passed a bond issue for fiscal year 2021 where we receive about $33 million. So that's where over $33 million of that is. Also, many of you have heard about the CARES monies. Those are the stimulus monies from the federal government, in which those dollars will have to be expended for those for specific purposes, such as providing technology for all of our schools. And so we're in the process of doing that. So that's also included in that $342 million. But we do see our total general fund revenue projected at $224 million. General fund again, mostly state revenues and our local revenues, mostly property taxes, sales taxes. Then we have our special revenue, over $68 million. Majority of that, of course, are our federal dollars. Our special ed funds, child nutrition funds, Title I funds. Those monies, again, are categorical in nature, and therefore specific requirements. Debt service fund, about $5.1 million. Of course, that $5.1 million was transferred from the capital projects fund. So really, the capital projects fund had about $48 million, but we had to transfer $5 million to the debt service fund to be able to pay long-term debt, because we didn't have the monies otherwise. And of course, capital projects fund, about $43 million. Of course, we're receiving about $33 million from the state, a one-time state bond issue. So of course, this is not money that we'll be receiving every year. It's just only for 2021 to provide us an opportunity to fix some roofs and do some HVAC and some other projects. Expendable trust fund, again, those are the club funds. Again, $342 million of our total projected revenues. And we're going to start off talking about our general fund, which is the largest source of funds that we have, the $224 million. Okay. And then we see a pie chart of our total general fund, the total $224 million. And let's just notice that our state revenue made up 73% of our general fund. Our local revenues make up 25% of our general fund. Ladies and gentlemen, that says to me that we are too dependent on state funding. We are too dependent on state funding. This is why when some type of hiccup happens, such as proration, of course, luckily right now the state does have money in what is called the state proration prevention account, but of course we don't know how long that will last. And the state stabilization account, we don't know how long that will last. But usually districts have to fend for themselves when proration hits. And that is the reason why we have to do a better job as it relates to our local funds. But 25% shows that we are too dependent on state funds. And there's a local comparison of Montgomery Public Schools and some of the other outlying districts. Let's notice that Birmingham City Schools, and let's look at their local funds. I think it makes up over 40% of their total revenues. Baldwin County, I'm not going to get on that, but Huntsville City Schools, and I see that's kind of blurred a little bit. I think Huntsville City Schools is about 44%. Okay, Huntsville City Schools is 45%, and what was Birmingham City Schools? 44%. Birmingham City Schools. Again, we're at 25%. At 25%. And now we talked about this property tax, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But even if the property tax passed, and it would be huge for Montgomery. I mean, absolutely huge for us to be able to do so many things that we need to do. But we still would be less than those other school districts. We'll be at about 35% of total local revenues in the general fund. About 35% compared to their 44 and 45%. But again, if we could get the $33 million, which would be derived from that additional millage, there'll be a number of great opportunities, educational opportunities we'll be able to provide for our students. The state funding process is basically based on student population. And based on the number of students we have at each school, we earn what is called teacher units. And those teacher units are converted, of course, into dollars. For example, let's say that in grades K through 3, we have 300 students. And let's say based on the state's funding measure, they provide us a teacher for every 15 students. So if you divide 300 into 15, that's 20 teacher units that you'll receive for grades K through 3. And of course, the state will look at the years of experience of those teachers and the degree earned from those teachers, and they'll provide us dollars for those particular teacher units. So that's the primary way the state funds education. And that is how the state's foundation program monies are derived. Of course, we make up about 4% of the total student population in the state. So we're receiving probably close to 4% of the total state revenues. Yes, ma'am.
And we're looking at 2.5 weeks of teachers with this budget amount, right?
Yes, ma'am. And that's going to cost us between $3 to $4 million with that loss of student population. I think it's really huge, though, that the very last bullet there says districts that provide more local support per pupil have the following advantages: increased seasonal cash flow, the ability to employ more locally funded teacher units, resulting in lower student-teacher ratio. And if you talk to any principal about what they would desire, there's to have smaller class sizes so that those teachers can pay more attention to those students. But if you have a classroom of 30 kids per teacher, then of course you're not providing the same opportunities that some district that has 17, 18 students per teacher, or 12 or 13 students per teacher. And so that's where if you have that local support, you're able to provide those type of opportunities. It also built to the fund enhanced learning opportunities for students, which basically means, we talked about robotics, talked about foreign languages. And there are a number of exploratory courses that we believe our students will be interested in, but of course we need those dollars to be able to employ the teachers to provide those opportunities. I look forward to where County is in every one of our high schools and some of our middle schools. So those are the type of opportunities that we want. Engineering, all of these type of opportunities that we want to expose our students to. There we see the foundation program earn units. And again, based on our student population, we earn what is called teacher units. And you see that based on 28,154 students, we earn about 1,640 teachers. Now, if we go out and employ 200 teachers or 300 teachers or 3,000 teachers, the state is not going to say anything. But they are saying the only thing we are going to fund you for is that 1,640 teacher units. So if you want to provide accounting in all of your high schools, if you want to provide French and Korean and all of these type of courses in these other schools, then you have to provide those opportunities yourself from your own local funds. You also see we earn 50 principals, 28.5 assistant principals, and we see the counselors and librarians. I stated earlier that in order for us to receive that $147 million of state funds, we'll have to put up over $28 million. And here we see how those dollars will have to be allocated. And we see, of course, a comparison from FY20 to FY21. Because of a loss of student population, we see a decrease of over $3 million for salaries and benefits for our teachers. We see a decrease of $1.2 million in fringe benefit dollars for our teachers. The state did level fund student materials and supplies at $600 per teacher unit, technology at $350 per unit, library enhancement at $157, and so on. We believe that in order to provide for our teachers, we still have teachers now that are having to pay money out of their pockets. They're going in their pocket personally to purchase school supplies. Now, before the COVID situation happened, the state legislature was talking about $1,000 per teacher unit. And of course, after COVID happened, then they had to go back and kind of revise the budget, and of course they decided to level fund at $600 per teacher unit. And so that's why we still have $600 as it was last year. Same thing with technology and library enhancement. Now the actual amount of money that we will receive from the state again is this $147 million. First, that $147 million that we receive from the state, plus the $28 million match, that's where we get that total foundation program money of $175 million. That is the $147 million from the state's foundation program, plus the $28 million local match. But again, we will receive $147 million from the state based on our student population. And we see that's a loss of about $4.2 million. The state also provides us some money for the school nurse program. And we receive about $1 million this year. Now that is not nearly enough. Because the idea is that we like to have a nurse at every single school. Now we'll be able to do that this year because of COVID and because the federal government provided us some CARES money to do so. But what about when that CARES monies are gone? Those are one-time funding opportunities. Also, you have some schools where you may have a child that has to have basically someone there or a nurse there the entire time he or she is in school. And we have to have a nurse available for that. And what the state or federal government says, you just got to provide that. I don't know where you're going to get the money from, but you have to provide those healthcare situations. Transportation operations, you see we lost about $705,000 there for fiscal year 2021. Fleet renewals are dollars that are used to purchase school buses. Of course, the transportation operation money is going to employ bus drivers. We have a fleet of about 200 bus drivers that we pay. We also have a mechanic staff that are also fixed on the buses. The capital purchase dollars, these are the dollars that are used for capital renovation. And of course, as I stated, in order for us to receive that $7.3 million, we have to put up about $1.4 million to participate in the state's capital purchase program. And again, that is that matching situation as we had to match the $28 million for the foundation program. At risk, those are dollars that are used to address our students that may be at risk of dropping out of school. And most of those monies are allocated at our alternative schools to provide alternative education for those students. Career Tech O&M, those dollars assist with our Career Tech students. And we see a total state funding of about $167 million that we're projecting for fiscal year 2021. And there again, we just see our local fund match, $28 million for the foundation program, $1.4 million for the capital purchase program. And we wanted to put this slide in again, mainly because we just kind of want to point out something. We see local revenues, the total local revenues for Montgomery at $56 million. We see the total local revenue for Huntsville at $103 million. Total amount for Baldwin at $140 million. Total amount for Birmingham City, $98 million. As I stated, we also have to do what is called fund match. So after we fund match or put up X number of dollars, then it shows how much money we have to use from a discretionary standpoint. And we see that our local match is $28 million. Therefore, that leaves us with about $28 million for discretionary. And this is to pay the power bills and secretaries and maintenance staff and everything else. We see also Huntsville City Schools, after they do their match of $27 million, they have $76 million in discretionary funds to meet their other needs. We see Baldwin County over $100 million, and we see Birmingham City over 60 million. Is that 69 million? So Montgomery Public Schools, 28 million. Birmingham City Schools, 69 million. Huntsville City Schools, 76 million. And ladies and gentlemen, the thing that bothers me the most about this is that Montgomery have about 28,000 students. Huntsville have about 23,000 students. Birmingham have about, is it 23,000? Birmingham have 22,000 students now. So we have 6,000 to 7,000 more students than these other school districts, and we get way less money. We have to do better. We have to do better. This is just a breakdown of our general fund revenues. We see part of our general fund, that federal dollars, we get ROTC dollars, $276,000. Of course, we have an ROTC program at many of our high schools. I think Carver has an ROTC program as well, if I'm not mistaken. As I stated, local revenues, of course, $56 million. And we see a breakdown of those various local revenues. Again, let's keep in mind, out of that $56 million, $28 million for local match. And then, of course, we see about $3.2 million in other, including indirect costs, which is a small administrative fee that our general fund assess to our federal program funds to operate those particular funds. There are basically eight instructional areas of expenditures. First, we got the instructional services. Those are activities directly related to the teacher providing instruction to the students. So any expenditure, whether it's paper, whether it's a piece of instructional equipment, any expenditure related to that student, that teacher being able to provide instruction to that student, those will be deemed instructional expenditures. Instructional support expenditures, those are basically those that support the teachers, such as your librarians, your counselors, your nurses, your reading coaches. All of those will be deemed instructional support expenditures. Your principals, assistant principals, those individuals that support the teachers to provide instruction to the students. Operation and maintenance are concerned with keeping all of our buildings both safe and secure and clean. So that's what operations are. That would be like our maintenance department, our logistics department, all of our custodial staff throughout the district, all of the utilities, all of that would be deemed operation and maintenance. Auxiliary services are basically transportation expenditures in the general fund, and it would be child nutrition expenditures in the special revenue fund, and I'll show you that in just a second. But again, auxiliary services, those are transportation expenditures in the general fund. That's the busing of the students to and from school and the feeding of the children as it relates to the special revenue fund. General administrative services, of course, we all know what that is. That's the superintendent's office, the finance office, the human resources office, those various administrative offices. Capital outlay activities, basically capital renovation is basically capital outlay. Debt service to pay the long-term debt of the school district. As I stated earlier, we transfer about $5 million from capital projects to our debt service fund to pay long-term debt. Other expenditures, activities, or programs other than those normally considered day school to include pre-kindergarten. So pre-K is considered an other expenditure. Now in many states that truly fund education very well, pre-K is just a regular expenditure. But of course, in Alabama, pre-K is considered other expenditures. And there we see a breakdown of our projected expenditures in our general fund. We see $134 million in instruction. Those are mostly teacher salaries and benefits. Then you have your teacher supplies, teacher equipment, and so forth. All of those expenditures concerned with providing instruction from the teacher to the student. Instructional support services, about $39.5 million. Principals, assistant principals, counselors, librarians, reading coaches, nurses, all of those salaries and benefits and supplies and items that those individuals need to provide support to the teachers. Operation and maintenance, the custodial staff, the maintenance staff, the logistics staff, all of the utilities, the power bill, the water bill, all of the utilities of the district. The security staff, of course, again, keeping the buildings clean, safe, and secure. Auxiliary, the $8.5 million, all of that is transportation. Of course, again, in the general fund, transportation is auxiliary services, and child nutrition would be in the special revenue for auxiliary. Of course, other expenditures, as I said, you'll see pre-K and also other fund uses. And there we see a pie chart of our total expenditures. One thing we do note here is that the grand majority of our expenditures are going towards the classroom. We see 79, almost 80% of our total expenses in general fund is going to support instruction. That's instruction and instructional support. I also want to point out general administrative. You know, there has been a lot of talk that we were top-heavy, that we had too many people in central office. Well, we did make some revisions there. Our general administrative expenditure is 3%. Now the state say that general administrative expenditure should not exceed 5%. We had 3% as it relates to general administrative. And I just really wanted to point that out because I want the public to know that our dollars are going to the classroom. Of course, we see operation and maintenance at 12%.
Mr. Wise, can I interrupt? And especially with the general administrative service end, it is often, and you're right, it's often talked that we are top heavy. We really do not have enough people to do what really needs to be done for children. There are a lot of support services that are housed in this general administrative services.
Yes, ma'am.
I've heard talks of social workers, mental health workers, and I have to tell them all the time if we had enough local funding, we could provide that. But given that we are pretty much on the, we operate from basically the state, there's just there are allocations, but there are not enough to do what the district needs to do for children. So that local funding helps us in that. But I know that that's the biggest talk around town, but if you think about it outside of the people and look at it as the service, we could provide more services through this area to support our students, and I just wanted to insert that.
Thank you so much. That is absolutely true. We are not providing all of the services that we need to be providing. You know, I talk to Dr. Williamson all the time. She's over our Student Support Services Department, and we talk about the need to meet all of these social demands of our students. And of course, we don't have the funding to be able to meet all of those needs, but we do the best we can with what we have, but certainly we'd like to do more. I'm going to do a recap of last year, of our prior year, well, 2020. This is the current. We're in 2020 right now, y'all. And let me just kind of clarify. Our fiscal year runs from October 1st through September 30th. Therefore, we are still in fiscal year 2020. Now, this budget presentation is for fiscal year 2021. Fiscal year 2020 began October 1st of 2019. It ends September 30th of 2020. So I'm doing a recap of our fund balance, projected fund balance for the end of fiscal year 2020, which is the year we're in now. And then I'll talk about how that relates to fiscal year 2021. We began fiscal year 2020 with a fund balance of about $19.6 million. We're projected an increase of almost $80 million in our fund balance. So we're projected to end fiscal year 2020 with a fund balance of about $27.6 million. That is huge. That's absolutely huge. Of course, you see our fund balance requirement for 2020. I said 18.8, but it's really $18.1 million. So we'll have, by the end of this year, almost $10 million more than what the state requires in our fund balance. Of course, that pretty much states that we have been responsible with the dollars that we have. Now, we were able to take advantage of some opportunities related to COVID. Some of the operational expenditures did decrease because of COVID. Some schools were closed for a while, and so we did decrease some of our operational expenditures. But it's also a result of what the board did. The board made some hard decisions last year, and so we were able to take advantage of that too. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's basically, we're back to you and what you were able to do. You had one of these things happen. You were not aware of some of the things that you have done a tremendous job of pointing out things and closing up the gaps and all that, and keeping us surprised with what's going on. And I would like to thank you and our superintendent for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, our projections for fiscal year 2021. As you see, our total revenues, of course, again, are $224 million. We are projecting total expenditures at $220 million. And so we're projecting an excess of revenues over expenditures of almost $4 million for 2021. We'll begin the year with about $27.5 million. I think I just mentioned that. You see $27.6 million there. Projected FY 2020 ending balance. That'll be carried over to 2021. And of course, we add that $3.7 million increase. So we're looking at the end of fiscal year 2021 with about a $31.3 million. Again, there are some CARES funds or some of those federal stimulus dollars that we are taking advantage of. And so we're being very, very, how should I say this? Very frugal is one of the words. He said cheap. One of the things that we're doing, when there are opportunities to take advantage to remove expenditures off our general funds to some of those other federal funds, then we do take advantage of that, as all CFOs do, I would imagine. And again, we see predicted $31.3 million. Our required fund balance estimate for 2021 is $18.3 million. You see the variance there. Our next source of funds is our special revenue funds. Again, the majority of our special revenue funds are our federal dollars. Again, those dollars are specific in nature, they're categorical. And the other thing about federal dollars, there's no guarantee that you will always receive federal dollars. There's no guarantee. Federal government basically say, okay, as long as we have the revenues, we'll provide that to school districts. However, if those dollars evaporate, states, you're on your own for the most part. That's why the state of Alabama requires all school districts to have at least that 1 month fund balance. And here we see about $68.8 million we're projecting in special revenues. Of course, some of the state dollars, about $127,000. That's a little local JAGS grant that we received to help some of our high school students. About $60 million in federal funds, that's child nutrition, Title I, special ed. But those dollars, again, are categorical in nature, could be only expended for specific priorities. Of course, local, about $4.8 million. Most of that are local school dollars. These are dollars that are derived in local schools, whether it's through admissions from attending a football game or basketball game, or the selling of concessions. That's what most of those dollars are.
This one is a JAG related to ROTC.
No, ma'am. It's a little program that's sponsored by the Department of Economic Development, I believe. And it provides some of our high school students the opportunity to do a little work while they're in school. And there we see a breakdown of our special revenue funds. We see about 88% of our total special revenue funds are indeed federal dollars. And that's just a comparison of our federal dollars comparable to last year, our projected 2021 federal dollars to last year. One of the things I want to point out is you see the CARES down there, $10.6 million. In all, we received about $20 million in CARES funding. We're projecting to spend about $10 million of that this year. And we're saying we're going to carry over another $10 million for 2021. Again, most of those monies are being expended towards providing technology for our students and providing PPE supplies and equipment throughout our schools. And I want to give our maintenance department they have done a yeoman's job in ensuring that our schools have been safe and secure. And so we really appreciate that. And we see about $4.8 million of school improvement funds there also. So that's about $15 million of that comparable to last year. And there we see a breakdown of those other funds other than federal funds. Those are our federal revenues there, the $60.7 million. And those are the other federal dollars. And we see in local and other revenues, most of that is our local school funds. See $746,000 of CMP daily sales and rebates. We used to get a little bit more than that, but because schools have been closed kind of off and on, we're not projecting to make that much money off the sale of a la carte, is what that is called. The CMP pass-through, our general fund is required to transfer monies to our child nutrition department to pay for some of their benefits. These are salary benefits. And this is a requirement. We have to transfer monies from general fund to our child nutrition fund for the payment of some of their salary benefits. And we see a breakdown of our special revenue expenditures. We see about $39 million, almost $40 million of that also going towards instruction. $18 million or $19 million, of course, is CNP. That's child nutrition, about $19 million. But other than the instructional, other than The auxiliary part is the child nutrition. Majority of the dollars are going towards instruction. And then we have a pie chart of also a breakdown of our total expenditures in the special revenue fund. Again, we're projecting a total amount of revenues of about $68.8 million in total revenues, expenditures of about $68 million, excess of revenues over expenditures of about $745,000. And this will be mainly monies from local schools, monies that the local school raise, and some sales of child nutrition. They may sell a little juice or a salad, and of course they do get some reimbursement for that. We'll begin the year with about $7 million, projected to end the year at about $7.8 million. Next, the debt service fund. Again, as you see, revenues are derived from internal transfer. We transfer monies from the capital projects fund to the debt service fund to pay long-term debt. In all, capital projects funds around $48 million for fiscal year 2021. And I'll give you a breakdown of that in just a second. Well, I guess I'll do that now. The capital projects fund, of course, about $33 million is because of that one-time state bond issue that was passed in the state legislature for 2021. And that provides Mr. Anderson and the district an opportunity to fix on some roofs, and is it HVAC also, Chad? Roofs and HVAC and several other capital expenditures. Also about $7 million of state capital purchase monies. We also require the local fund match, as I stated, at $1.4 million, where we have to transfer monies from the general fund to capital projects to be able to participate in the state capital project funding program. We're projecting about $4.7 million of insurance proceeds for BTW. We've already gotten some of the dollars from BTW, and we have about $4.7 million more that we're projecting to receive in insurance proceeds. We also are carrying over, you see the beginning fund balance there of $9.5 million. We also are carrying over about $4 million of BTW funds as well. And I think the other $4.5 million that we're carrying over is ETF. Those are one-time funding that the state provided also. These ETF payments provided lately over the last 2 or 3 years, but they are not a permanent funding source. But the grand majority of these monies will be for capital renovations, basically. And there we say the state capital allocation, the state bond issue, and so forth. And I think I just did a breakdown of that beginning fund balance of $9.5 million. Of course, ETF was about $4.5 million that we're carrying over from 2020, and about we're also carrying over about $4 million in BTW insurance proceeds. Expendable trust fund dollars, basically club dollars. As I stated, the FBLA club, I'm sure many of us participated in several different types of clubs when we were in high school. The SGA club would be another club. The business club would be another club. And of course, those dollars are raised by those particular clubs and can only be expended by those particular clubs. And there again, we see our total annual operating budget for fiscal year 2021. Again, we're projecting, I'm going down to the fund balance there. We're projecting in our general fund to end the year with about $27.6 million. We believe that we'll have an increase in our general fund of about $3.7 million. And we're projecting to end fiscal year 2021 with about $31.3 million. In our special revenue fund of about $7 million, we began the year with. We believe that the schools that we have budgeted there. Now, the thing about those insurance proceeds, we have to expend those money within a certain period of time. Those proceeds, RBT doesn't have to expend those dollars within a certain period of time. So we're projecting to really push to do some things to go ahead and get that school finished as quickly as possible. So we're projecting that all of those proceeds will go toward that particular school. But of course, the other $30-some million, there'll be some going towards various schools, HVAC, roofing, and several other capital expenditures, floors, and so forth.
So you're saying we're in 1.3?
Yes, ma'am. We end up with about 1.3 at the end of the year. After doing all the capital renovations, we really would like to do so much more. As I stated, we have over $250 million in deferred maintenance. So it'd be nice if we had $250 to $300 million to really fix up these schools. Some schools we just need to totally replace. But of course, until hopefully that this tax passed, we can be able to do those particular things. So we have to just do what we can right now. Expendable trust fund, they began the year with about $600,000, increased to about $48,000. Of course, at the end of the year, about $642,000. And of course, you can see what our ending fund balance overall would be, about $41 million. And that's just a breakdown of our total budget, all funds. Total operating expenditures. And of course, capital and debt is not considered operating. So. And if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to. Also, I just want to say to the public, also there's an email that if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Also in the back of the budget book, the last page, there's a questionnaire where you can ask any question about the budget. We'll be more than happy to address those questions. Thank you so much.
Mr. Ross, I'm sorry, I did have a question.
Oh, sure.
I was just wondering, and I know I brought this up last year about the Helping Montgomery Family Initiative that MPS gives $100,000 to the district attorney's office. Where is that in the budget? I'm curious. What would that be under?
That would be under at-risk.
Under what?
At-risk. That would be in the at-risk expenditures. It's part of at-risk. Yes, ma'am.
And do we get, I mean, I guess there's other agencies or organizations that we pay money to partner with or to help or collaborate, whatever. Just curious as to what in the last, since March to 15, 6 months, so we give $100,000 a year. What can you tell me exactly what that goes to in the DA's office and what, do we have numbers that show that what it's worth? It just seems, and I brought this up about a year ago, I think, or it's been a year. It just seems like a lot of money, and are we getting $100,000 in return for that? And in the last 6 or 8 months, have they been really doing stuff for MPS and at-risk kids? And I know the kids haven't been in school, but have they, sometimes you have to be flexible and you have to kind of look outside your box. You can't just sit there. But has there been any reporting? Did we get an annual report from them? Or how does all that work?
I'm going to have to ask Dr. Moore and Dr. Williamson to help me with that.
That's something you would have to put in with Dr. Lee.
Okay.
In her area. So it's been something that would answer your question to the whole board about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watts.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you all.
Before we begin, the budget hearing is here adjourned. And before we start the next one, I ask Dr. Ruby Brings Coleman to do some devotional. But yes, we ladies and our the persons who are looking on and those with us, we come together as a policy-making governance body, and because of the attention that we do get from our public, we are so happy that we're also here as a community. And I would like to ask each individual to reflect and think about what it is we really want, what it is we need to get done, and we should each individually and collectively make plans to accomplish some worthy goals. I'd like for us to make checklists and actually ask for guidance in prioritizing and staying focused. Proverbs 27:23 reminds us that a shepherd should pay close attention to the faces of his flock and hold close to his heart the condition of those he cares for. We must pay close attention to our main responsibilities. We're paying attention to what's important. Our students, our teachers and staff, and the families we serve. Hopefully we can steer away from distractions and muster some self-control that allows us to focus on doing the right things. Those of you who will, please join me in invoking the Holy Spirit into this. Father, I pray that you are with each of us and that you will guide us and help to satisfy the needs that must be met during this meeting and beyond. We're thankful, Father, for the unique gift that we see in our students. As we move forward into uncharted waters and unprecedented times in education, we ask that our students be filled with confidence and with enthusiasm. I ask that the Holy Spirit guide and cover each of them in grace. Help our teachers, help our students, help our parents to persevere and not give up. I pray that teachers have a heart to serve and they serve in wisdom and understanding. Fortify us, Father, that as we deliberate, as we make important decisions, that we are guided so that the meetings are productive and that we are actively engaged and that we are impactful in the decisions and actions that we take. Let us be eternally devoted to your will. At this time, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we still have four here. I'd like to get an approval of the agenda. I second. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. I'd like to talk about the good things happening in PBS. Often it's about one student winning a competition or one person making a difference. And other times it could involve 100 students. Or it could be about a community partner stepping up to help with PBS. Tonight we have a little of all of it. Congratulations are in order for Lanier parent liaison Phoebe Ray Hayes. She was named a community hero by the Montgomery Advertiser for the month of August. Phoebe is a ball of energy for her students and spends untold hours helping them reach their potential. She has even gathered several of us board members to be part of her Poet Nation Super Grants, grandparents that are helping students. This is so well deserved for her, and we send our heartiest congratulations to Phoebe Ray and thank you for her service. school to receive money for meals. More information about the program can be found on the district's website. Next, we want to thank Alabama News Network and its partners for a successful Stuff the Truck event. People were able to donate non-perishable food items to MPS students, and we thank them for their community service. And finally, I would like to take a minute to talk about what happened here a few minutes ago. We had a budget hearing. What is remarkable about this hearing is that the thorough attention was paid to every detail. It will be a balanced budget. It will be on time, and we will stick to it unless we're able to save some money along the way. When compared to last year's budget, it is improved. It is lean and mean, and we will make the most of every dollar for student improvement. Kudos to Mr. Arthur Watts and Dr. Moore for tending to the financial affairs of MPS. It seems repetitive to say, but if it were not for their eagle eyes, we wouldn't have caught the fruits that sold from our children in the past. And while it's odd for me to say, I look forward to the coming year's audit because I have confidence it will be clean because Mr. Watts and Dr. Moore have been attending to our finances. We are finally at a point where I hope the public understands that we are watching every penny and can be trusted with new funds. There will be a referendum coming up in a couple of months, and I hope you will agree with me on that point. And we have no citizens comments tonight.
Madam President, real quick, if I may have a point of personal privilege, the young lady, I think y'all can hear me.
It's hard to hear.
Is it hard to hear? It is. It's hard to get over this earring when I take it off. I just wanted to put out there that the young lady that came and presented to the board at our August 11 meeting, Grace Jackson, was on the online newspaper. I don't take the paper, but online she was highlighted for her presentation with the board. And they did a wonderful write-up about it, and I called her and told her because she didn't know, and shared the article with her. And she just wanted me to let you all know that she is so thankful for you giving her the opportunity to present. She was very nervous about it, and she was just glad that you all listened and were very supportive of what she was doing. So I just wanted to add that in there, because when you talked about people in the community wanting to come in and help, she's a freshman at Tuskegee University who came in and said, I know I'm young, but I want to help.
Well, any good news is welcome. If you have some, please. So now we'll move on to Ms. Harper. We'll tell everybody who receives information.
Hi, everyone, and good evening. All right, my name is Katie Havard, and I'm the lead school psychologist for Montgomery Public Schools. And due to the current COVID-19 pandemic, MPS has the need for a proven and evidence-based way for us to provide virtual telehealth assessment. Sure. Yeah. Let's try again. Telehealth assessment and teletherapies for our students with special needs. So I'm presenting this information to you today about the need for Presence Learning License with the input from our speech therapists and our occupational and physical therapists of MPS. Presence Learning, Inc. is a provider of live, online, K-12 special education related services. So virtual services in special education are not new to Presence Learning like they are to the school psychologists, psychometrists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and preschool evaluators at MPS. Presence Learning has been provided these services using their evidence-based online platform with their own team of clinicians for over 10 years. So the contract that you have presented is for a year-long license for use of the Presence Learning online platform by qualified NPS district personnel to use for speech therapy and assessments for areas like articulation, language, and speech fluency, for psychoeducational assessments like intelligence testing and academic testing, for occupational therapy and assessments, and for physical therapy. All of which can be provided to students virtually, whether students are in their home with the support of a proctoring adult or in a school-based clean room environment, where clinicians and students are in two separate rooms in the same building. So the contract also provides support and comprehensive training and access to ongoing tech support and clinical support as we navigate this new way of delivering services. In the special education testing process, evaluators use standardized tests to determine the nature of student problems and to provide information for IEP teams to determine whether student weaknesses constitute educational disabilities that need services. Alabama special education law mandates that the standardized tests that we use be validated for the specific purpose for which they're used and administered in conformance with instructions provided by the producer of the test. So due to these legal and ethical mandates and copyright law, we can't simply put our current paper-based evaluation materials, which were developed for in-person administration, into an online platform for testing. So for us to engage in virtual practices, we must have evidence that the results of our assessments we give remotely are equivalent to results if we did the same test in person. So right now, that research field is very new and it's somewhat limited. Presence Learning has done the research studies, and for assessments that are available on their platform, studies have been conducted showing equivalence, meaning that we can have confidence in the validity of the information and the scores. Presence Learning has partnered with various test publishers and put virtual stimulus books on their website with clear visuals and embedded directions for the examiner to read, and with live video to mimic in-person services. Other companies and test publishers out there have one or two tests, maybe, available virtually with research backing, but none that we found to cover all performance areas, ages, etc. So with Presence Learning, evaluators have access to a one-stop library of virtual testing materials for a variety of performance areas. Depending on the discipline, some evaluators will also need document cameras, and all evaluators will need their normal paper scoring protocols, but otherwise, as long as the evaluator and the student have a tablet or a computer, most materials are included in the license. At the current time, school psychometrists and psychologists are assessing students in person using abundance of safety precautions, including plexiglass dividers, face shields, masks, sanitizing protocols, etc. So Presence Learning would make virtual, comprehensive evaluations and services in our discipline possible. They would also help us to meet state-mandated timelines that are directly tied to the amount of IDEA federal funding that MPS receives. Because our district did not have access to such a platform this past spring during mandated school closures due to COVID-19, we were unable to complete a number of assessments for initial evaluations and reevaluations and are getting caught up. While it's important to note that online psychoeducational assessment may not ever be appropriate for every student, with Presence Learning, we have a virtual option for the vast majority of our students. In terms of therapy, the virtual therapy room has all-in-one place motivational rewards, a built-in library of over 100,000 evidence-based resources for the therapist to access and use interactively, and the ability to upload our own materials. Since the beginning of the school year, speech therapists and occupational therapists have only been able to use Zoom or other video conferencing platforms for teletherapy, searching for their own digital materials or purchasing them independently to engage students. Presence Learning allows for appropriate session planning, since therapists are able to create digital folders ahead of time in one place and maximizing the time that they would spend with students. All of the extra options that Presence Learning has over a video conferencing platform will make therapy more effective. And most importantly, the Presence Learning platform is HIPAA and FERPA compliant to protect student privacy. In Presence Learning, the therapists and students can use their computer screens interactively, typing on the same screen, using an interactive whiteboard and mouse, and allowing for various cues and assistance. For occupational therapy, there's also an embedded Earlin filter that can help with visual discrimination and perception and will increase accessibility for some of our students. When some students may not have supplies at home, much more than pieces of paper and a pencil, Presence Learning will allow the OT to offer a variety of activities which will cover more skills than just handwriting, but also fine motor skills and sensory and movement needs. The Presence Learning proposal offers expert clinical support and initial and ongoing training on learning the platform and delivering remote therapy and assessments. There are live training sessions that are discipline specific, as well as ongoing tech support, parent support, and weekly clinical office hours. The purchase of this platform license would allow MPS service providers a more efficient and effective way to provide therapy and allow us to administer evaluations in a safer manner, one that's legally defensible and is also evidence-based. So it's something that we can all be proud of. So thank you for your time and consideration. And let me know if you have any questions.
Are there any questions?
Under student services and special ed. We sent it to Mr. Rudolph, and he reviewed it prior to giving it back to us. Under what did you say, miscellaneous?
There was some things in here that I was just wondering if this has been built. Are you recommending this? I see some of the agenda.
Yes, at some, at the next part of the agenda is going to be recommended as an agreement to approve these services.
And I was looking at the price, and it said, price that goes in the service order do not include tax. So tax has to be added to this. Is this something that the special ed or student services, are they pushing for this?
They're here, I'm going to let Katrina read. And then on the question of taxes, Mr. Watts, being a school system, the taxes, this is our fee that we're going to be charged, the one that's on here.
I just noticed that when he was talking about the care program, that this is a one-time thing, and, once you finish, you don't have any more experience, not doing this and that. I was just wanting to make sure this is something that the special education student services want.
Yes, and they need it. And then, of course, it's a year-by-year kind of a contract. So if we needed it again, it would come up again for you to vote.
And thank you for your comments. I think you might have answered this question, but just for my satisfaction and get rid of some of this heartburn, this is sort of on-the-job training, because as soon as our teachers are a little bit more comfortable with the platform, they're going to begin immediately if this is approved. They will begin working with the students using the platform.
Right, there's training that's self-paced, and then there's also live training involved, and then most of it is tests that all the evaluators are used to using in person and having their paper and pencil materials, so it's really learning the online platform, and then we can really turn around that information very quickly to be able to use it.
I had one question. So going back to the training question, that was a good question. How long, just have it. How long will the teachers, will there be a duration of time? Because I think it will be needed. They're learning Schoology still and all of the other stuff. How long will there be a duration of time for training if it's 1, 2, 3 days, just so that they can really get comfortable with it? And trust me, I know how important this is for you to go ahead and get this going, but I wanted to just ask that. Okay. Okay, when I heard evaluations, I thought it was them. Okay, that was all.
So you understand that in IEPs and things like that, there are certain kinds of therapies that different students will have.
Oh, yeah, I do understand.
Right, and these are for those standardized tests that are only a certain way they can be given, so this is a way to give them online.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next up, we have Mrs. Davis with the Career Tech Workforce Impact.
Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon.
You should have had a PowerPoint given to you in your packet, and I'm not going to go through every slide of that because I'm sure that you have enough time to read that at home. But I do want to touch on our leadership. Career Tech in Montgomery Public Schools is a very large endeavor. We have 78 teachers across the district that receives Career Tech funding. 11 of those are at the Career Tech Center Impact, but we also have them throughout our districts at the middle schools and the high schools. We offer 16 career clusters to where students can start their pathway. I noted I had a couple of questions when I sent the PowerPoint over about the numbers not adding up. So if we can look at page it's on page 4, where it talks about the technical clusters, pathways, and instructors. So we have 16 clusters, and you've noticed that number doesn't add up. Well, the reason is because those clusters may be prevalent in the middle school, the high school, and at Impact, and I'll use health services or health science. We have a health science instructor in a program at the Career Tech Center, but we also have that at Brew Tech. So that number will not add up. The same way with the pathways. Pathways specifically our business pathways are almost identical across our district, no matter what high school they're at or if they're at Impact, and our middle schools. Our middle schools only offer business except for Fluid. Fluid offers Project Lead the Way, so that's why we have 2 different clusters in the middle school. The question was also asked when we were putting this information together, why doesn't every middle school have a Career Tech program? That is up to the individual principal if they want to take one of their units and make it a Career Tech unit. Some principals have expressed interest in doing that in the future. Some have expressed that they do not want a Career Tech unit there. I think the one that has that was done away with most recently was the agri-science at one of our middle schools. So that's kind of how we go through that. Career Tech is really 2 separate entities in Montgomery Public Schools. So we have the school setting, the district setting. That leadership is myself, Dr. Crenshaw, and Ms. Thornton, the 2 education specialists that is housed at Impact. But we also have the Impact side, which is, I'm over that as well. and my counselor, which is Dr. Woody, and she also does with dual enrollment. Dual enrollment also is available for our career tech students. That was one of the interesting things that we talked about during some of our cabinet meetings. Not sure that everyone realized that you could get dual credit at Trenum with your career tech programs. We offer every cluster that the state provides for career tech education in Montgomery Public Schools, except for one, and that is transportation, distribution, and logistics. Our students can get that credit at Trenum with auto service technology. We just do not offer that program at Impact or at any of our high schools. So if a student is interested in getting auto service technology, they have to do that through Trenum, so that they are transported, our students are transported to Impact, and then that bus actually takes them across the road, drops them off at Trenum, and then same process in the afternoon. They'll pick up our kids at Impact, go to Trenum, pick them up, and take them back to their home school. It does. It does. They do get credit for that at MPS. This year, because of COVID, they were not allowed to do that. Trenum required them to be on campus, and we did our first 9 weeks virtual. So we had to do some rearranging with that with Dr. Woody at the Career Tech Center. We would invite you to come out and see our Career Tech Center. I've got 21 years in education in the state of Alabama, from Central Alabama all the way to North Alabama. It is one of the best Career Tech Centers that I've been a part of. And I've been a part of quite a few of them. We have an excellent opportunity for our students. I'm not sure they are aware of what they can do at the Career Tech Center and what offerings we have. And we're working hard on that every day to make sure that our students have opportunity to come out, tour the facility, and can get a skill or a trade that can help them be successful in life. That's our mission statement in Career Tech, it's educate, empower, employ. We know, you can look at statistical data, students that do not get an education, not get a skill, they're not leaving our communities. They're going to be here. So we need to have them a way to be productive members of society. I want to flip over to the very last page. On the last page on mine, it's the last 3. We currently have 5 programs that do not have instructors, and we work hard at that every day. And I'll just take my building science program at the Career Tech Center. We have posted that job 3 times since I've been hired. We have reposted it and reposted it twice. There's just not a whole lot of applicants. I had 1 applicant apply. Interviewed him, turned his name in. He did not pass the background check with the State Department. So I interviewed Saturday somebody else, and in a process of trying to get him recommended to the board as well. 2 of our 2 middle school vacant programs, they turned in their resignations last week. They should be posted, I would say, by the end of the week, and we'll start that process of hiring them as well. On the very last page is our contact information. If you have any questions, yes.
You admitted at the very beginning of your presentation that the numbers were incorrect. I see that you have the instructors at 7 to 8. Is that correct?
That is correct. The numbers are not incorrect. They just don't add up because they do. Okay, they don't add up to be the. No, you can't add them in a line. So we have.
When I added the clusters, I got 22 and for pathways, I got 28. So you're saying
You can't add those numbers. That program, you may have a cluster at middle school like business. We have business in the middle school. That's one of our 2 clusters. But we also have that cluster in high school. We also have it at Impact. Same thing with the health services. But the instructors is correct. We have 78 instructors across the district.
Okay, so the district total offerings is not 16 and 25?
It is 16 and 25.
16 and 25?
Yes, ma'am.
So you double counting something?
Yes, ma'am. They count in different, they count in middle school, high school, and Impact. Some of them do. And the same way with the pathways, they may count in all three or just two. But that, we have 16 clusters and 25 pathways in Montgomery.
I don't do math, so I had a question. I had, and maybe you answered this, but, so there are different programs, I'm sorry I can't see you, but there are different programs at different schools, but so what if a student wanted to do something that was at another school? Can they do that, or they're just limited?
They're limited
To what's offered at their school?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But they can come to Impact
Right.
and take any of their programs.
Right,
Now,
right.
and there are districts across the state that allow students, say, if they're at Lee and they want to take something to JD, that they would be able to come get their core classes and go over and get their career tech classes at the end of the day at the beginning. We have not broached that subject yet.
Okay, and are you planning to, or, I mean, because I mean, that may be a stupid question,
No,
but
that's
I
a
just
good
see that, you know, I would hate for a child to be boxed in just because they were zoned to a school and they're not good at landscaping, but they really are good in accounting, and so they're like, well, too bad, you can't go to that school. So are we going to address that, or?
We will address that coming down the pipe. I got hired July 1st, and I can't remember our first career tech director in 16 months. Is that correct?
Probably
About that
close.
time. So we've had to clean up a lot of paper issues, I guess is the best way to put it. And we're working hard every day. I mean, we're still trying to hire instructors, and we're in September. So I think that's the first thing we need to address. But we will definitely look into that. I mean, that is a process that takes place elsewhere across the state.
Right, I would imagine so. Okay, thank you. I look forward to that happening.
There's one other thing too, and that is if we get our tax referendum passed, there are plans for more programs in schools.
And if I may just add one thing, in the past, and there have been, the students were allowed to go from one school to another one, but there was a cap on how many kids could come from another school, so I just wanted to put that out there real quick.
And look, ladies, I have y'all just a small token of our appreciation from Career Tech. While the next person comes up, I'm going to hand this out. Is that okay?
Mr. Anderson,
Ma'am.
tell us about what's going on in the operations.
Well, I thought I'd give us a little different update this time, more of a show and tell.
You say I seem to be moving Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's good. That's good. All right, good evening. Wanted to do something a little bit different and let you kind of see what we've been doing behind the scenes and some things that our schools are starting to see out there. A little bit different operations update, more of kind of a show and tell, and I'll kind of walk across here and explain what you're seeing up here on each of these items. And also, I know you see the distancing dots and all throughout the auditorium here, or some of these here, and have some signage here. I'll let you kind of look at those as we pass them around. These are items that we produced in-house that maintenance produced. One of the things that we did this year, we purchased prior to all of this was a vinyl cutting machine, which we felt like it was going to be something that would be utilized really heavily. I mean, there's lots of different applications, whether we dress up the front of a school with a vinyl covering like you see on, like how they wrap cars and different things like that. There's different types of vinyl coverings that you can print pretty much anything on. And you see there also some of the things that we've done with this. Just for an example, on the distancing dot, I had one of the groups put in a work order or not a work order, purchase order requisition to purchase some of these, and they were going to get 500 of these, and it was about $4,000. We did 500 for less than $150. That's the kind of money we were able to save, and then you could take that extra money and put it towards technology or whatever you may need to utilize for that. But the options with this thing are limitless. With the machine that we've already paid for the machine with what we've been able to produce for these different things, and it just, those vinyl coatings will just stick to the windows, the doors. There's also a technology with it that you can use it to put crosswalks down. You can put stuff on the floor like you have with this right here. So just if we do 3 or 4 crosswalks, we would have paid for the machine, but it has paid for itself. What we've been able to do with signage, and it's pretty limitless with that. And Director of Maintenance Lee McKenzie came up with these to help us with that. The next thing you see here is the cart here is a portable hand washing station. One of the things that we were asked to come up with through the nursing department was to be able to provide a hand washing station for each area, because a lot of the older schools, especially, where when the nursing programs came on, they were either given a classroom that may not have had a sink in it, or they were put in basically a closet, and those areas didn't have it. So again, we tasked maintenance with this. They produced all of what you see here in-house. Cabinetry, they plumbed out everything there with it. Our master plumber, Preston, came up with the workings underneath. Basically, all you need is a plug. You just plug it into the wall, and it has a pump underneath there, and then there are 2 canisters, one with water in it, and then one for drainage as well. And we'll be equipping each one with a hand sanitizer station and a soap station, so our nurses can wash hands throughout, and that's one of the things that's required with that. But super easy to maintain. Custodian can put a 5-gallon bucket underneath it and pull the plug, empty that out, and then fill, again, this on top here is used. They can fill that reservoir that's underneath the cabinet here through the top, and very ingenious with that. The ones we saw online that you could purchase about $4,000 to $5,000, we did this for less than $800 in-house. The pump in the cabinet being the most expensive thing in this of that. The next thing is the sneaker guards. This was locally produced. One of our local merchants here. We're getting a lot of different people wanting plexiglass put up, and first thing we had was downtown. The HR was seeing a lot of people coming in for applications and different things. The price of the plexiglass Lexan shot through the roof. This thing happened, and this group came in and did this. They are one of the only locally approved people. You've probably seen these in your voter stations as well. They do this with it. It has a slot underneath. We provided 2 to each school to use how they see fit. We provided a number to child nutrition so that they could outfit their registers with those. And then we also provided some districtly to different administrative offices, and also different groups that go out to the school and have to meet your kids closer or parents closer, so that they could have something portable to have with this. This has been good for us as well. The next thing you see is I'll kind of move it this way, is our backpack sprayer. We purchased these actually back in last August, and I purchased them for the simple part of the flu season, trying to be ahead of that, take care of that. And these things have really paid off big time. We have not had to outsource any of those items. And you see these folks standing over here to my left, a lot of them are out days, nights, spraying individual schools, and they are spraying in the district. Just to give you an example, in about the last 17 days, we've sprayed a little over 30 locations. So, and it's every day, several times a day that we're utilizing these things. One of the reasons why I did this is because our former process was to bomb the area, come back in, wipe everything down, and then leave. It's very time consuming with the process. This is only, you spray it down, it's set for 15 minutes. Once it's dried in, you're good to go. You don't have to wipe it down, you don't have to come back with anything else beyond that to utilize that. Again, and I keep encouraging the people out in the schools, don't rely on this. Don't think this is going to keep you safe. Practice good personal hygiene. Make sure you're washing your hands. Make sure you're using hand sanitizer. Make sure you're doing the little things for yourself, because this is as good as it'll treat what's there, but 5 minutes later, once you're back in and somebody's infected, they reinfected the area. So really take care of yourself. This will help us kind of mitigate some things. And Dr. Boswell has ordered one for each school. They're kind of pricey, but he's ordered one for each school, and we're waiting on those. You can imagine these are kind of a hot topic and a hot item across there. But what they are is what they call an electrostatic spray. So what it does is it ionizes the water, and it will envelop whatever the spray is. So I don't have to walk behind this plexiglass for it to contact it. I can spray in front of this, and it will totally wrap around this whole item here and cover that. That's one of the reasons why I feel good about using this kind of technology out in the schools and around, and then the chemicals are very safe for people to be around. We just ask them to leave for a few minutes, 15 minutes, to let us spray and then let it dry going into that. The next machine you see over here is currently in every school and has been, is what we call a C3 machine in logistics, and they utilize this in the bathrooms with disinfecting and all what they have. Every school is equipped with one of these C3 machines, and our people help maintain those as needed, and the custodians tell us, if they're having an issue with one, and they also go around and monitor those as well. Basically, it's outfitted. You see the chemicals hanging in the back. It's outfitted with disinfectant chemicals that we'll spray down and then squeeze them into the drains that are in the floors there. And it's something that really speeds up the disinfecting process in our bathrooms as well. And then our next thing here, last thing, is our Tomcats. These are the floor scrubbers that we've been working on getting outfitted throughout the district. When we came in, Dr. Boswell, one of the first things was what's something we can do that we need to be doing. So floor scrubbers are wearing out. So that's what we've been working on. Mr. Watts has helped us with that and make sure we don't hit the general fund, because you can imagine these are not cheap machines. And every school, we just received the last order of these. Every school will be outfitted with a brand new one of these. And then we're working on trying to get the larger location, high schools, middle schools, with multiple floor scrubbers. Not necessarily a Tomcat right now. We'll try to utilize some of our older scrubbers that are still in good working conditions. But as we go along with my thought process on these is next year, we'll order a handful of these, and then the next year we'll order another handful. So we won't get to a point where we have to order 50, 60 or whatever, all at once, and be more economical and spread the costs out over time. Same thing when you see three machines there with that. All right. Any questions on those items? And also, you received your care package today. This is what's going out to the schools. It took a while to get all the materials in for that, but that is every high school and middle school currently has one of those. We've got about half of the elementary schools packets ready to go out on trucks to the different locations, and they'll be delivering those this week. And we'll try to wrap up the rest of those the following week to have for each and every location. One of the items that we don't see here, The sub-dispensers, our folks did an inventory of those to make sure that every bathroom and every school has a good operating sub-dispenser and hand sanitizer dispenser. And then also, each school will get several of the portable kind of hand sanitizer stations for the administration of place in various locations throughout the classroom, or throughout the schools or in the hallways.
So this has to be a good job with it. I'm sure that our teachers appreciate it and our students, when they come down, those people in it. Now, well, you said, Mr. Wright, after looking with most of these funds come out of the care funds.
We got, the last big order of them was through the CARES Act funding. We were able to finish that, but we utilized the ATF, ETF funding the last couple of years to kind of slowly piece it together. But the last big batch was CARES Act funding.
So when they ask you, money you can spend.
Yes, ma'am. We want to put it out there in the schools. That's what we're trying to do.
I heard you talk about the ionized configuration. That's going to be water or chemical?
Well, you have chemical that you put in with it, but it's mostly water. I mean, for example, to fill up that 2-gallon tub is just basically squeeze that. It's that much chemical. And the chemicals that we use are approved to be in schools. They're either ammonia-based or peroxide-based chemicals. And again, they're very harmless to folks. And that's the only thing we ask. It's kind of the smell of it when you get in there first. It's got a good clean smell to it. But if you're spraying it, if you're around the spray, if you're not mashed up, and you can see some of the jumpsuits they wear, it can be a little powerful, to start with that. But after 15 minutes, just dry it in and you're good to go.
I like that for killing whatever might be there. The only concern I had was the reinfection. Yeah, reinfection. There are products that do continue killing, 4 hours, the one I'm using is 24 hours. But that, we don't have anything similar to that.
One of the things that they're not, the EPA has not backed those type of kill claims up yet on some of those things. And that's one of the things that we're waiting on. We've gotten some things that people will tell you they'll last 3 months or 6 months or whatever with those things. But we don't do anything unless it's backed up by those folks, the CDC or the EPA or whatever that gives us that kill claim of however long it would be. But yeah, it's the thing that, and I have to applaud Dr. Boswell on what they've done, in training the custodians and training the principals. We've been right on target with everything that's been required of us over the years. I mean, so this wasn't new, like the disinfecting procedures and the cleaning procedures that he trains his custodians on each year and that the principals help monitor. It's not anything new. It's just more frequently that we should be doing things. And we've asked the principals too to kind of back off a little bit on the flooring part of things. Let's focus more on cleaning those hard surfaces and making sure that those high touch areas are getting more attention throughout the day, as opposed to just cleaning the floors, every single, whatever period or however they basically go through those, because we don't have any students in there right now either, so we're trying to maintain those high touch areas.
I never knew until this year that we could use Clorox. Is it Clorox? Yeah, because someone said you could spray mold and then there's a mold with Clorox, but then I was told you can't use Clorox.
Not in school.
I never knew that.
I had one question. And it's really with transportation. I know that we will be, there's a survey out to the, for the face-to-face. So in the event that should occur, transportation is like, transporting kids. So will one of those be on the buses to clean it, or will it be
what
private?
the state's requiring buses twice daily.
Okay.
So what they're going to do is they're going to, each of our buses are going to be equipped with hand sanitizer so that they can, when the kids get on the bus, they can just squirt a hand sanitizer. Again, they're required to wear the face mask. I'm going to give them some disposable face masks also in case they have a student that comes up there without, a mask, so that we can provide that for them. We're also going to leave the seat directly behind the bus driver as a containment seat for anybody that may be getting on the bus that has any kind of exhibiting any kind of symptoms, because we can't leave a kid sitting beside the road if a parent drops them off. So we're going to have that seat behind them open. The state's stance on this is that the seats are self-contained and that we're going to follow the manufacturer's specs as far as two to a seat or whatever it will fit. But again, MPS is going to leave that bus directly, or that seat directly behind the driver open. So if we have any students that are having any signs or symptoms, they're also the signage that was passed around. We're going to have a version of that posted on the bus as well, so that we just have another way of just continuing to enforce, pay attention, make sure you're self-assessing yourself on those signs or symptoms of things as well. And then these will be, after the morning route, they'll get sprayed, and then after the afternoon route, they'll get sprayed again. So when the kids are getting on the bus, every time they'll be sprayed down, and then they're going to load from back to front so that we're not crossing over people, as we're loading onto the buses.
And in the schools, the high-touch areas for classrooms and bathrooms, that would be the custodians that, of course, clean out the bathrooms and whatnot. And inside of the classroom, the teachers would just use the cleaning products that they were given, or?
Yes, ma'am, they can use that. And I like, a lot of them want those aerosols, but you can't refill an aerosol can. Those bottles that we give them there with that TV side clock, you can refill that they can ask their custodian to refill that with one of the chemicals that we provide there on site, and they can spray down as they need. I've asked them also, don't let somebody else touch your computer. You be the only one that touches your light switch. You be the only one that closes your door. If you can limit the high-touch areas to only like that teacher handling those things, you can kind of mitigate your risk on those things, and then keep your distance as well from folks that you're out there in the love. That's one of the things Dr. Moore has asked me to work on, is giving some kind of best practices when we're out there in the schools coming up for operations of things, how we come into the school, how we do transfers in the hallways as far as in between class periods, and how we exit the school at the end of the day as well.
I have one more question, and I'll be done. This is for the self-contained special ed units. There's a lot of physical contact in those settings, OT, PTs. Will they be given some type of PPE, whether it's the clothing guard or gloves or face shield, because I know that they have a lot of interaction with students?
And that's one of the things we've asked for, like the principals, to help identify for us those people that need extra stuff, like a librarian, because they're going to see masses of kids coming in and out, and different folks in different classes, and they're going to have that cross-contamination. So that's one of the things Dr. Blakey in curriculum has asked is, can they get a little bit more stuff? One of the things we provided for the librarians is book drops. Gave them a big cart with 5 tubs each, so that they can mark those off by day, each one of those days, Monday through Friday, the 5 tubs, and then let time be the disinfectant on those books so that you're not spraying down books. And there's new stuff every day with that. Dr. Blakey shared something with me last week about laying the books flat, not stacking them up. So there's a lot of different things like that we're having to contend with as well. We want to provide like gloves for them. I think those self-contains, and I've been around some of those in my other districts I've worked in. A lot of them already have gloves and different things. We may need to help provide some more items as well, mask or whatever.
Or face shields.
Yes, ma'am. There's a face shield in your care kit there. Everybody will get one of those in the district. Every employee will have that. And then the state is providing those 3 cloth masks for each employee, each student, and all that can be utilized as well.
The cloth or the disposable?
They're cloth, the ones that the state are providing, they're reusable.
Oh, that's good to
Yes,
hear. We didn't know that. And the samples that you provided each picture, are those medical grade?
Well, what you're seeing, like the disinfectants and different things, yes ma'am, those are medical grade.
The blue one.
The masks, no, those are disposable. Nobody really can get their hands on like the N95 mask or whatever.
These come in medical grade and non-medical grade.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But as far as protective wise, we're not giving out N95s with those. We don't have those. About the best we can get is KN95.
And one, I swear this is the last one. Security, because with students coming back, and especially in our upper grades, will they also have PPE, because there may be some instances where they may have to escort a child out if they can't, touch them and walk them out.
Yeah, we're giving them a little different type of glove. It's more like a work glove that has a neoprene covering on it.
They don't know what it is.
And then they'll have the face shield and mask as well.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, Mr. Anderson?
I tell you, I have an easy job with the directors that I have. They do a great job, and it's just a pleasure to work with them. And
It's very encouraging, because we're talking about sending our children into schools, and very, very encouraging that we're doing everything possible.
yes, ma'am. And I know Dr. Moore mentioned the cabinet a lot. We're going to make mistakes, and it's going to happen. We can't think of every little thing. And as far as the facial coverings, the CDC came out and changed that a week or so ago, and that unless you're wearing an N95 mask and you're around somebody with that 6 and 15, you're supposed to self-isolate. So, things change rapidly, and we'll adapt, and we'll keep moving.
And speaking of moving, can you move into the new elevator addition?
Well, this is something, and I put it on the spreadsheets in the past. It's something that finally came to fruition. We got the low bid in, and that's what's in your packet is the low contract bid that's in there for that elevator addition. This will make that building meet ADA compliance with what's going on with the consolidation project with that, and it's also ATF funded, not general funded. Mr. Watts has worked with us on that as well.
Okay. Any questions on the elevator? Then moving along, it's time to talk financial again. Mr. Watts.
So while they're moving their equipment, let me just add that every department has looked at all of the ins and outs that might occur when students return. And we've tried to cover everything that we can think of. And then at an individual school, there will be a case-by-case scenario, and we just have to deal with that based on what pops up. And it won't be one of those across-the-board kind of solutions. It might be just a solution for that particular school. But if it happens again in another school, we can also remember what we just did in a particular case. But I want to tell you that these folks all have worked really, really hard to cover our bases on all of our, the things that, where we have deficits, because in our system for many years it appears that we just have not had some things that we needed. So over time we're trying to get those things, and even though some of it may be purchased with CARES money, we're getting things that can be used more than one time, so that when the CARES money goes away, the equipment will last as long as it lasts. The replenishing of some supplies may be something that we have to figure out how we're going to buy, but the machines themselves will be something that we will be able to keep until they tear up. So we're going to turn it over now for our financial report.
Good evening.
You should have received visually your financial packet for the month of July. Montgomery Public Schools has just completed the first month of the last quarter of the fiscal year. And we're pleased to say that the general fund balance as of July 31st
is approximately $35.4 million. Our total year-to-date revenues for general fund was totaled $194.6 million as of July 31st, compared to $190 million in July of 2019. The increase in state revenues is mainly due to the 4% pay increase approved by the state legislature for fiscal year 2020. As of July 2020, over 90% of the budgeted local tax revenues have already been collected. Our total expenditures for July 31st, 2020 are at $178.7 million compared to $188.9 million in July of 2019. Although we're paying the employees an increase of 4% more in salaries, our expenditures are lower compared to last year due to our adjustments in overall expenditures. Operational expenditures have also declined because of COVID. Although the pandemic has been very challenging for our district, we are projecting to increase our general fund balance by over $6 million, with a projected ending balance of about $28 million. We have access also to almost $20 million in funding due to COVID-19 for CARES funding and offsetting some of the expenditures related to the pandemic. We're very appreciative to the superintendent and the board as well as department heads for working closely together and making difficult decisions to adjust various areas of expenditures for fiscal year 2019. While some of the decisions were painful, they have provided our system with an opportunity to obtain that state-mandated one-month fund balance for fiscal year 2020. We understand that we must continue to monitor all district expenditures, especially in the area of personnel, also as well as review the purchases of goods and services in an effort to continuously improve our general fund balance. And as always, we shall remain open to suggestions from the board and the public as well. In your packet, you have several reports. You have the Snapshot Analysis. The financial information in the Snapshot Analysis provides a general overview of Montgomery Public Schools' financial activity for the stated month. This report includes the budgeted information for revenues and expenditures compared to shows our actual compared to the amended budget. Also, it includes a comparison of our local revenues from the prior fiscal year, July 2019. And also notice there's a comparison of the total payroll expenditures for July of 2019 compared to July of 2020. And you will notice there's been a decrease there. The next report in the packet is our monthly and annual comparative statement of revenues and expenditures. This provides quite a bit of little information if you're comparing last year month to date and also year to date compared to last year. It also states, this report also shows the variances in our actual revenues and our actual expenditures between fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2019. The percentage of revenue sources compared to the total revenues, you'll see that, as well as the percentage of expenditures by functions compared to the total expenditures. The next report in the packet also is a statement of cash flow. The statement of cash flow lists the total amount of revenues received versus our total expenditures, total amount of expenditures paid over the last 10 months for fiscal year 2020. So you would see our revenues over the last 10 months as well as our expenditures over the last 10 months with a total year-to-date, actual year-to-date total, and then at the end you see a percentage of what was actually budgeted. For example, with the percentages, you may see the year-to-date state sources are at $141.4 million.
Our total budgeted is $169.4 million. Therefore, the state revenues received compared to budget is about 83.46%, which is about where we should be at this particular point in the year. The next reports are visuals. The pie chart of total cash inflow gives you a visual of the percentage of revenue sources. For example, our year-to-date total local revenue percentage compared to total revenues would be about 25% for local. So we have $50 million collected, approximately $50 million collected in local revenues compared to the $194 million that's collected, puts us at about 25%, for an example. For our expenditures, our total cash outflows on the next pie chart provides us a visual of expenditures by function. The total cash outflow chart divides each function of expenditures paid, for example, instructional services, instructional support services, by total expenditures paid to determine the percentage of expenditures for each function. For example, operation and maintenance percentage of total expenditures is at about 10.5%. We have at year-to-date $18.7 million compared to $178 million in expenditures, that gives you about 10.5% of that is operation and maintenance. And you will notice that the majority of our expenditures are in instruction. The last set of reports are the F reports, the reports that are uploaded to the State Department. We have a combined balance sheet that portrays the board's assets, liabilities, and fund equity as of July 31st, 2020. The focus is on the general fund portion of that, and you will see that we have assets totaling $35.7 million, liabilities totaling approximately $312,000, with a residual fund equity of approximately $35.4 million. Of that $35.4 million, our reserve fund balance is approximately $6.4 million. That means that we have those funds obligated through open purchase orders, which leaves our unreserved fund balance at about $29 million. The next report is a combined statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in the fund balance as report. And this report portrays the board's year-to-date revenues and expenditures for the period October 1 through July 2020. That concludes our financial presentation for the month of July. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Moore?
Okay, so as a matter of record, the item F is a resolution regarding the board's support of the tax proposition. And so we made sure that we talked with all of our legal advisors about what a school system may or may not do in regard to a tax referendum. And so we want to make sure that we stay in line with the legalities of that tax proposition. So this is just a resolution which gives the board the opportunity to show its support by matter of resolution for the tax proposition. And that is in your board packet.
Any questions? Any questions for Dr. Moore on this? Okay, Dr. Moore?
All right, the next item is the renewal of the Atbe Automobile Fund participation. This is simply an insurance coverage that we do through the State Department that we have to do on a yearly basis. This has been vetted by Marvin Rudolph, and the deadline for making sure that we get it in, I believe, is September 30th. And so we will not be having another meeting prior to that, so that's why we added this to your agenda. But it is routine. We do this every year to cover our automobiles or any of our vehicles. And this is through the State Department.
Okay, any questions on that?
We will do it.
next up, we have our consent agenda, which, Dr. Moore?
All right, so I'm going to recommend approval of the consent agenda. Most of these items were covered tonight. The consent agenda is the memorandum of agreement with the city of Montgomery, which we talked about at our last meeting. Chad discussed that with you. The teletherapy professional development and platform license agreement, the new central office elevator addition, the July 14, 2020 board minutes and August 11, 2020 board minutes, and the 2020-2021 renewal of the ATBE automobile fund participation. So I recommend approval of the consent agenda.
Madam President, I move that we adopt the recommendation of our superintendent, item number 7A through D, as recommended by the superintendent.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor signify by a show of hands. We have unanimous. Dr. Moore?
All right, so the next one under item 8, consider for approval. We'll go each one separately. A, I recommend approval of the resolution regarding the board support of the tax proposition.
I move that we accept the superintendent's recommendation for item A under A, consider for approval, resolution regarding board support of tax proposition.
I second. Any discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Any opposed? 6 to 1.
All right, item B, personnel report, certified personnel. I want you to pull number 24 from that personnel report. And so I recommend approval of the personnel report, certified personnel minus number 24.
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation under number A, consider for approval, letter B, personnel report, certified personnel with the removal of number 24.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor with a show of hands? Okay, unanimous. Dr. Moore?
Okay, item C, under 8, I recommend approval of the personnel report, classified personnel, pulling S13.
I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation under number 8, consider for approval, letter C, personnel report, classified personnel, removing S13.
Discussion? All in favor, a show of hands, please. And that's unanimous.
Madam President, may I? We're at the end. We're at the end, right? I just wanted us as a board to just go on record extending our condolences for Keandre Pope, who was 16-year-old junior at Park Crossing, who passed away last Tuesday from an ATV wreck that he had on Sunday. It's been very, very sad that this past week for all the students, but particularly their family. He was just a really stand-up guy, really respected, and so just wanted to, Park Crossing, and they just moved over here from Selma, and they had finished the football practice Sunday afternoon, and it had stopped raining, and so he and some others went out ATV riding, and there was an accident. The coaches said, if I just kept him maybe 30 more minutes, it would have kept raining and they wouldn't have gone. But anyways, it's been very, very sad. So I just wanted to, say how sorry we were as a board. It's always tough.
So stated. Just because I didn't say this at the end of the meeting prior to this on the budget, there will be another budget hearing Thursday, September 10th. Is that it? It is at 5 p.m. Okay, at 5 o'clock at Park Crossing, just to make sure we know that. Your next meeting, our next regular meeting will be Thursday, September 10th at 5 o'clock, and we are adjourned.
I didn't know you must have been. Oh, that's the here.
Attorney Hill sent a reminder this Friday, September 11th at 9:30, the hearing. You still gonna be there?
Employee,
For your hearing, this Friday at 9:30? Yes.
we'll send you a reminder out.
Also, if you're not in a hurry, I have signs in my car.
You wanna, do you need that too?
I got the original, and I'm gonna get you to sign that tomorrow.
Okay, okay. So do we need to Claire sign anything while she,
That folder right there.
okay,
And then I'll take that back. I'll get your signature tomorrow.
okay.
People were so nice. Well, if they had waited 7 months, and I was just back on the, but she's gonna give me some suggestions, share. But it was really nice. She had to do a, what they call a watch party, because nobody could come and, but it turned out really nice. But I was glad it was over. And thank you all so much for your support. And you'll get an official thank you card in the mail. She has to learn to do that. To do the thank you card.